your mic's not working.
Yeah, I'm talking to projection right now, so I'm trying to talk louder for the moment. Do we have other filmmakers from the shorts, all of the shorts? Sounds like it. Is that working now? Okay, it's working now. Can you hear me? Thanks. Okay, if you want to introduce yourself and your film.
My name is Habiba Nosheen. I'm the director of Outlawed in Pakistan with Hilke Schellmann.
We wanted to thank our wonderful editor, Hilke, who's in the audience now, translator Amal Hana.
I'm Nadav Kurtz. I'm the director and producer of Paraiso.
My name is Markos, and I was the lead cinematographer on Paraiso.
My name is Yergler. I was an additional shooter and assistant editor on Paraiso.
All right, we're open for questions from the audience. We'll sit here. Way in the back.
Hi, thank you for all being here. The Pakistani film, I wanted to ask the women, how did they get access to the family?
Initially, we started filming 3 women in Pakistan, and our hope was to tell stories about resistance and what women do on the ground to sort of, you know, they're not just oppressive creatures who just sit there and just take whatever's happening to them. They resist, they struggle, they fight, and we wanted to kind of capture that fight over a long period of time. And then eventually, Kainat's story was just so strong. Every time anybody watched our rough footage, they just said, that's your story. And we kind of went with it, and you know. But we got in touch with her initially through the Human Rights Commission in Pakistan when we were looking for women to talk to who were in the middle of a process or middle of something they were going through.
Were there any difficulties in getting footage of the accused rapists?
You know,
Would you repeat his question?
Yeah. I think the question was there any difficulties in getting footage of the accused rapists? The thing is, in Pakistan, if you're a woman and you show up with a camera, people don't know what to do with you. They just talk to you. And no one was threatened by us, and no one just said, no, we don't want to talk to you. I mean, people just, that lawyer, the defense attorney, he just said whatever was happening and shared whatever was on his mind. And it's just, I think women are just not seen as very threatening creatures. So, you know, they show up with a camera and they just, yeah.
Yeah, I sort of had the same feeling when we first went to Pakistan and we started working with Kainat and the other women, and we wanted to get, you know, we come from a tradition as journalists, so we wanted to get to the other side of the story, and we kept talking about that we really need to talk to the alleged rapist, and I was like, that's going to be impossible. Why would they ever talk to us? And the people was like, well, let's see. And it was surprisingly easy, that part.
We have one in the back.
Have any of the laws been changed?
Have any of the laws been changed in Pakistan, I'm assuming you mean? The problem is not really the law. I mean, Pakistan went through sort of somewhat progressive reform of laws pertaining to marriage and rape in 2006. The problem is the implementation of the laws. I mean, if you have a rape investigation in any country and you don't have the resources to collect evidence, to send DNA testing for sperm testing, I mean, then you just end up having the men's word against the women's, which is what happens in this case. And, you know, it's hard to win that. Like, it's hard to prove that in court because, you know, the penalty is up to death, right? So if you have possibly death penalty, the judge is going to want a lot of proof. But if you don't have the state funding or the resources or people, even the police officers wanting to sort of collect the evidence and there's no training of that happening, then laws are really not that useful.
Not even now, after all these years.
No, I mean, this is as recent as this film, no, nothing has changed.
Do you have any plans for how the film will be used in Pakistan?
We don't yet. We have, this film will be shown on PBS in the U.S. and Frontline in spring. We're really grateful for that, and we have partnered with organizations like the Polish Center on Crisis Reporting and the Ford Foundation, and we literally just finished this film a week ago. So, that process of brainstorming is definitely something that we're thinking about.
I know the incident case has been well reported in Pakistan. Do you think that that will help create a different public environment? And has there been any protests in Pakistan?
It's hard to say, honestly. Pakistan has had a lot of really vibrant protests around human rights issues, but to actualize that into something that's more concrete, that's not that. I mean, the country is going through its own problems, and unfortunately, rape cases are not a priority. And if you don't have the funding or the resources that the country's putting in behind that, it's hard to really make changes. But I think people have been outraged, and but that doesn't always actualize into something more concrete in Pakistan.
I have a question for the director of Paraiso. Your film has a lot of spiritual elements, and I was just wondering if those were part of your design when you first started to plan the movie, or if those just surfaced.
Yeah, they evolved. I mean, we had a lot of conversations. I don't speak Spanish, so we did a lot of conversations around some of the themes in the film over a few months as I got to know them. And then when we did the final interview, I did it in Spanish, and I actually was just shooting. I didn't know what they were going to say, but we had gone over so many of the topics that I had a familiarity with what they were talking about. And that was something that the spiritual elements were something that I became more and more interested in because just for personal reasons, like I just have an interest in how people live their lives and deal with their mortality, and that became, as I was talking to them further about what they were doing, it became much more clear that that was, for me, like what the kind of the heart of the film was actually. So I really appreciate that you noticed that in the film.
So just continuing that theme, what was your goal? I mean, at the outset of that film, what were you hoping to accomplish?
The question was what I was hoping to accomplish in the outset of making the film. I was just fascinated by these men. I was working in a building in Chicago where they worked, and these guys popped in, right in front of me, and then disappeared. And I was just immediately struck and curious about, who are these guys? What are their, I felt like there was kind of, you have this kind of like intimate connection in some ways because I see them working on the other side. And I wasn't sure if they could see me, and you wave to them, they don't really respond. So I was kind of curious, about that relationship between people that do this kind of invisible work that. That is not really known about by the people inside the building. So it was really kind of a personal interest in just who these men were initially.
Somebody in the very back.
Yeah, I was curious. I liked the way you did it. It was short and poignant. I think for Paraiso, both of them were, but Paraiso's the question. And I wondered but I found myself wanting more. And were there any ideas that you discarded or anything you had to edit out because of time constraints or hoping to have done more or anything?
Yeah, that's my background is as an editor, so that was kind of the. I have a tendency to really try to make things very succinct, and there was some other footage, but I guess I felt like when it became longer, I mean I did longer versions, and it felt like some of the kind of the thrust of the theme of the spirituality and the more meditative qualities of what they were talking about started to get diluted. So it became more a film about the job of window washing versus, for me, what the film is about is actually, how do people deal with their mortality at work and just in their lives. And so So the length actually was designed in a way to kind of, to just highlight those themes in a way that was, like you said, succinct.
My question is for the cinematographer who speaks about mortality in the job. Was any of the intimate footage of the rappelling from the buildings, was that you, or did you strap cameras onto the window?
I would have gone down the side of the building, but in all honesty, the insurance companies for the window washers and the buildings, they were not going to let any of that happen. We were pretty lucky to get on those rooftops as it was. There was definitely a sense of, being up on the edge of the building. There's no guardrails or anything. There's a little ledge in some of those buildings, maybe like a foot high if you're lucky. So you're pretty aware of it pretty quickly up there with the camera on a windy day, that you need to be careful, and it sort of heightens the intensity just even working with those guys as to what they're doing. So there's really only a couple shots from that are sort of more first person at the very end, and we put a GoPro camera on the guys, Just a little camera. I don't know why I mentioned it, but just put a little camera on the guys. Yeah, we're getting sponsored right now. Other than that, it was more observational. As you saw in the beginning and ending, some stuff from another building shooting across at them. And then, there's some other parts that were a little more first person on the roof with them when you're seeing them, rigging and starting to go over that. Does that answer the question?
One more?
I have a question for both groups of people. I was just wondering, as filmmakers, how do you hope, what do you hope as an audience that we take away from your film, I guess? I don't know, since both films had a lot to do with social activism and drawing awareness to kind of these human issues, what do you see as our role in enabling you to talk about these stories of human activism?
For me, I think the main thing is just appreciation of one's own life and of kind of the meaningfulness of work and just the kind of the everyday life on the one hand, and then also of people that that toil away in obscurity and take care of things that we are not really aware of, and are risking their lives and are working very hard to do that. I think those would be the two things that I would say.
I think for me it was very important to get a more nuanced portrait of parts of Pakistan, of life on the ground in Pakistan. Like I'm originally from Germany. I live in New York. No idea. I mean, I only knew Pakistan through the media, so I went there. And when you're on the ground, you see that lives are way more nuanced and different than you would ever imagine, and things are way more complicated than they ever see as the stereotypical image that we have. So that was really important to me, to see that there are Pakistani men that are helping Kaina, that her father is doing this and is not killing his daughter. So those things were really important to me, and I think big plus.
I think also as a Pakistani, but also as a journalist, I wouldn't classify this film as social activism. I don't see myself as an activist, and not that there are not a lot of great films that come out of that, but it was important for us as a team to sort of try to hear all voices. And you got a story, and you have a perspective, and you had a stake in this. What do you have to say? And I think hearing the voices, often when we're talking about cases of rape, we forget to talk to men. And I think that's sort of important in engaging men in these conversations as well, and how their lives are also disrupted by events that are traumatic like this, like Kainat's brother dying and his father's life being turned upside down. So I think for us, it's, we just wanted to tell a story about life in Pakistan as objectively as possible.
Time for one more. Did you find it hard to be impartial when you were hearing those stories and deciding what to put in and what not to put in?
I don't think so. And that might sound ruthless, but I think it's, we both are first and foremost journalists, and it's sort of, I think I would be robbing you of a perspective if I'm just creating a film that projects what I think. And that's why it was really important for us to go out of our way to try to also have the alleged rapist perspective and how, you know, what their strategy was to fight this case. And we met with them as humans, like, hey, you know, you're going through this, tell us about it. And I think that's probably why they were willing to talk to us too.
Thank you.